Thank you, and recognize Ranking Member Lucas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned in my opening statement, there's an abundance of natural gas resources in my district and in many parts of the great state of Oklahoma, as we've discussed. But also as a farmer, I understand and appreciate the importance of the reliability of water, and I'm particularly interested in the research partnerships and results in these areas. So I turn to you, Dr. Singh. In your testimony, you expressed the same sentiment, but by saying meaningful interactions are needed across a variety of stakeholders, including universities, local governments, and industry. Can you give us some examples of that collaboration that you and/or Oklahoma State and industry stakeholders have been a part of that's generated beneficial results?
I'll give you one small example, and this came about our discussion with One Oak. Now, One Oak transports a lot of natural gas that's produced. In the winter, to transport this natural gas across pipelines, they have to add methanol to as an antifreeze, basically. Now, at the same plant, they're flaring methane and burning it burning it away. So one technology that came about, and this is research now that's been done, and this actually involves partnership with a very eminent chemist at Caltech, is to take the on-site methane, convert it into methanol, use that methanol instead of pumping methanol to the stations and then discarding it at the other end. The only reason this came about was because I was in discussion with the One Oak researcher and talking about issues. And this is a very specific example, I understand. But I think in terms of my perspective at the Helmrich Research Center, a lot of this discussion has been driven by industrial advisory boards in identifying the problems that academia can solve.
So let's touch on that for just a moment, the industrial advisory boards. Your experiences with the interaction, and are there ways that perhaps we could help encourage that collaboration?
Yes, I think for us, especially as academia, when we seek out, let's say, federal or state level funding, when that funding specifically mandates convergence type of research or talking to various stakeholders in terms of the probability of getting funded, then that pushes multiple people to the table, and that has been helpful in our case.
I can't help but, Dr. Singh, touch for a moment on the topic of fracking and injection wells, which is a very sensitive subject in our great state of Oklahoma. In my home area, typically the oil and gas products come out in the particular area I'm at, and it varies, of course, in the 10, 12, 13,000 foot range. And historically, fracking has gone on in my home area at least since the early 1970s. Not as aggressive as the hydraulic fracking, the improved technology, but fracking's gone on. We've never had earthquakes or that sort of stuff. The injection well process that's come along in recent years, where again, typically in my area, the material comes out at 12, 13,000 feet, but it goes back into an injection well at 5,000 feet or so. We seem to have a different kind of a lubricating zone there, so to speak, under the earth. But wouldn't you agree that the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, the entity with primary jurisdiction in our state, has been very aggressive in how they've responded to these issues about the seismic issues that have come from it, how they put limitations on certain areas and this and that and the other?
Yes, and I think a lot of that comes from a lack of scientific understanding as to exactly what goes on. I think it's a problem that can be managed. A similar analog would be to say all fossil fuels are bad and stop consuming them tomorrow, which means we would come to a standstill as a country. So
exactly. Therefore, it's fair to say that the Oklahoma Corporation Commission is trying to respond in a way until technology can catch up, until we can do the things we need to do to be able to address this process. Thank you, Doctor, for being here today. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.